This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Blundrick, as I like to call it, Canada, here on February the 26th, 2025. And you know what? It's always a rare occasion when I get somebody that's ahead of me in the time zone. In this case, my guest, I believe, is 4 hours ahead of me because I'm an hour ahead of East Coast time. Folks, I have a talent relations fellow on the show with me today. And I was first tipped off about him through Leslie Hoffman um, from A Nightmare on Elm Street. She, of course, was the girl with the hall passes. And she makes sure everybody has a hall pass, or you don't get to go to the restroom. Folks, this guy had connected with me, and when I recognized the name, I said, "Well, I got to have this guy on to hear his story." And he's a guy of many talents, and Leslie filled me in on a few of them just to give me a little background. And here we are, folks. I give you the awesome Jamesy Davidson. How you do, Jamesy?
I'm good. How are you?
Now, I'm trying to think. We were talking about Mia Goth before we started. An Infinity Pool, was that the name she called the guy Jamesy?
Yeah,
Hey, Jamesy.
yeah. And you're right. I am 4 hours ahead of you, and I'm used to that never being in the same time zone as somebody. Um, but like I think it was probably a year ago or something. Um, Natasha Tosini,
I've had
um,
her on here. Yep.
she reached out to me from Winnie the Pooh, and she is based in the UK, so we're in the same time zone. And I would like text her at like 10 p.m. and be like, it's 2 o'clock in LA. And then I remember, oh no, wait, she's not in LA. I'm texting her at 10 p.m. And, she's lovely, but it's just like, I don't want to wake anybody up. Um, you know what I mean? So for me, time zones are always, like I said to you, give me an American time zone and I'll work with it.
You're the first one that asked me that from the UK, you know? So I'm like, perfect, because I work all night. So this worked perfect. I got right off work. I'm wide awake, and there we go. But
Yeah, I just started work, so I'm exhausted. No, I'm
so,
joking.
so is Natasha still hogtied in the middle of the road?
Unfortunately, yeah, nobody has found the ropes yet to be able to untie her. Um, but Natasha's lovely. Natasha is such a sweetheart. Um, Her boyfriend Lewis, who played Tigger in Winnie the Pooh 2,
Oh,
um,
really?
he is a sweetheart.
He was at Frightmare in the Falls last year.
He was, yeah.
I didn't get to meet him. I have met Craig David Dowsett, who played Winnie the Pooh in the first
The
film.
original, yeah.
And I've had him on here a couple times, and I met him. I got a picture signed on his table that had him and Piglet, and in the pool was Natasha. I figured I'd get
Yeah,
that one signed, you know?
yeah, that's a very popular picture. I
Yeah.
wonder why. um,
Well, I wanted one that had the two people I'd interviewed from it on there,
yeah,
and I don't know if Natasha will ever get it to a con that I'm at, but nonetheless, I figured, well, I've had her on the show, and I got Craig on the show, so yeah.
I I am not sure if Tash was at Frightmare. I think she might have went with
No, she
Lewis.
wasn't. She wasn't. No.
But they're both lovely. And Lewis loved Frightmare. Um, I didn't book him for that. That was a different agent, but he loved Frightmare. I think it was him and maybe one of the other
I think it
um,
was the
agents.
new Winnie the Pooh. I don't understand why they didn't bring Craig back. You know, we talked about that on the second interview, but Craig's all good, you know, like he holds no befuddlement over that, you know, so. He's good, a
It's the
very
industry.
good-natured guy.
Yeah, it's the industry.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't continue playing your character. But Craig's awesome. Craig's at every convention under the sun, um, and he's a great guy. I've met him a few times, like just at conventions. Um, and he's a really nice guy, and he enjoys. It's seemingly he enjoys conventions and meeting people whose childhoods he ruined. Um, because that's what it is, right? It's ruining childhoods.
Hmm.
Um, and he seems to enjoy it. Conventions are a weird place filled with the most amazing, crazy people. Like I love the energy at conventions. There's nothing quite like it. You can go to concerts, you can go to comedy shows, you can go to all of these other places where, granted, some of the convention goers might be, but there is nothing like the energy of a convention and everyone being there for one thing. You know what I mean? Um, Especially if you go to like a horror convention, um, everyone is there for horror. Nobody, there's none of this like, you know, back and forth. Um, None of the disrespect that is so prevalent in society in general. Everyone just enjoys being there, and it's amazing. Um, and actually, we were talking about Sean Clark before we started recording, and he is actually why I got into the industry.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so yeah, it's interesting. I whenever I was younger, probably like 14, 15, um, would watch episodes of Horrors Hallowed Grounds on YouTube. And it was actually the Nightmare on Elm Street episode that I would watch on repeat. Because I grew up watching the film, obviously. Um, and, seeing him with Amanda and seeing him with Leslie, and that skit that they did in the hallway. Um,
Did Sean have his hall pass?
He did. He had an all access pass, and I'm so convinced that he printed it himself. Because there's no way anyone gave Sean an all access pass. Um, but yeah, no. So I remember he was the first sort of um, representation of this industry that I had ever seen. Because I had never gone to a convention as a kid. Um, I know, weird. But there just was none at the time near where I live. So Sean was sort of the first representation of conventions that I had seen. Um, and yeah, he's the reason why the nightmare has continued.
It's interesting. I've lived here my whole life,
Yeah,
and I started doing this podcast in 2015. So I've been doing it now 10 years, and Lisa
congratulations.
Langlois. Yeah, thank you. Lisa Langlois from the movie class of 1984 was on my show a couple times, and on the second time she was on, it was in 2017. We got talking about travel, and she had just moved from Los Angeles back to Toronto because that's where she was originally from, and she asked what was stopping me, and I made every excuse in the book, and she pitched to me the opportunity to assist her at Horrorama in Toronto.
Yeah,
And I couldn't say no to that, you know. Um, still to this day, I love Class of 1984 and I've interviewed several people from it. And I went down there, and Lisa's become a very good friend of mine. And I've done a few conventions with her. Uh, Often, I fetch her coffee or lunch or whatever, But nevertheless, she helped me get a passport done up, and I did my first American con last April. I was at Chiller.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
Just threw yourself in on the deep end there.
Well, Lisa phoned me and she told me that she was booked at it.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'll see if I can get saved up for that. And I was able to do it. And I went there. I love doing. Anytime I go to Toronto, I see Lisa. We're like she hears from me on her birthday and Christmas and vice versa. Um, I'm like that with Nancy McLaughlin too, except that I haven't personally met Nancy yet, but Nancy did. I should show this though. She did have these made up.
Oh, I seen these in your interview with Leslie.
Yeah, American Express card.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are so cool.
yeah. Nancy's a sweetheart. Yeah. So,
That's
yeah, I've gotten to know a few of the guests quite well, and Chiller was a lot of fun. I didn't like standing in immigration for 2 hours. I'm so
unfortunately,
used to
yeah, I
just
do.
get, yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah, I do. Every time I go through um the airport, it's usually to go to America. And boy,
Yeah.
both sides as well. So like whenever I'm leaving Ireland, I have to go through customs and all of that stuff and TSA. Because there's actually American TSA agents and American customs agents at Dublin Airport. Um, and then whenever I land there, you have to go through all the passport checks and stuff. And I'm like, how has my passport changed between leaving Dublin and arriving in Chicago? Like, like it hasn't been with me; it's been in my bag.
I had somebody who would like to invite me to the London Film Comic Con, and I would have been all for it, except for the fact that I would have a 10-hour layover at one of the airports going there and a 10-hour layover going back. Now, for me, that's 2 days of work,
Yeah,
of vacation that I'd be wasting in an airport. And most times airports aren't located around anything that you know.
yeah.
So I don't think I'll do that one, but uh
It's actually really, really funny that you mentioned that convention.
mhm.
Um, that was my first.
It's a
So
fun convention.
yeah, and it was my first convention. So I, whenever I was 17, um, I think 16 or 17, um, Amy Dumas, who is better known as Lita, um, the Wrestling Hall of Famer,
Oh,
um,
yes.
she was going to be in London, and I had just finished my events management qualification. Um, so I reached out to showmasters who run the event, and I was like, I'm going to be there anyway. I've already paid for my ticket to meet her. Do you need extra help? And they wrote back and said, yep, we'll refund your ticket. Um, just come and work the convention and meet her. And funnily enough, she cancelled that event. Um,
Oh,
but it was fine because it set everything in motion. And I stayed with them until I started my own agency. Um, I was with them and I was in different various roles, and um, that company is like a family to me. Um, and they're all like I love every single person that I met while working there. Um, the talent was great, but it was always about the crew and
I'd go if it wasn't for the two layovers,
yeah,
a
that
lot
is a
of
bit
time.
insane.
Yeah. Well, I know Richard Dreyfuss is supposed to be there, but he
Yeah,
canceled Frightmare in the Falls last year, so it's kind of like, you know, um, Sean Young definitely looks like somebody would be of
that's
interest to me.
that's our client. So that we booked her into that show. Um,
I love Sean. I've had Joanna Cassidy on a couple times on here from Blade Runner, you know. So I definitely would have gone to meet Sean Young, you know. But I've never had a bad experience at any cons. All been good. There are some guests who amp it up. If I may quote, this is Spinal Tap. There's some guests that'll amp it up to 11. If you haven't met Felissa Rose, she's one of them.
I love Felissa. Felissa and I share many friends, including the creator of Final Destination, Jeffrey Reddick. They have worked together on various projects. New Fear's Eve is one of them. Jeffrey was a producer, and obviously Felissa was in it. Um, Felissa is amazing, and she was just at London last year, I think. And she all the time, no matter what her mood may be behind the scenes, you don't know it, and that
Oh
is
my
exactly how
goodness,
it should
yeah.
be.
I met her
Um,
twice. I haven't had her on here, and she said she'd come on, but it's like she's doing something like every day. Does she
yeah,
sleep?
Felissa is very busy. Felissa is very busy, and that's good for her. Not just money, but also she's getting to interact with everybody, and it's great.
Do you want me to tell you a
But
Felissa story?
yeah,
Okay.
everyone has one.
Oh, well, I love it when she does cons with Dave Sheridan, especially when he's dressed
Yeah,
as Officer Doofy.
yeah,
We need the Officer Doofy Angela crossover. We need that,
yeah.
you
We
know?
do. She
Yeah.
needs to be in. She needs to be in the new scary movie that's coming out. Just as Angela.
Well, I got a picture of him like going like this, and he's sticking the vacuum cleaner hose up her hindquarters. But the story
Yeah,
I have, she was the second time I met her, she was in between Dave Sheridan and Christy Swanson. And I was
that's a
getting,
good place to be.
yeah, I was getting a bikini pic of Christy Swanson's side. She was very distracted because the first year I met Felissa, she had the Angela face picture. This time I met her, she had the Angela face picture, but you could see the penis.
Yeah,
And that was distracting to Christy Swanson. So Angela took a post-it note
stuck it over the
and
penis.
drew a penis on it
Oh,
and stuck it on the bikini pic right on the crotch area. And Christy Swanson's like looking at that and she goes, "Why is it so small?"
oh yeah, yeah. That sounds about right. And now she's doing photo ops in like the prosthetic,
Uh-huh.
um, and that's hilarious to me. Um, Everyone remembers where they were whenever they seen that film, right?
Oh yeah.
And the first time they seen Angela, in all of their glory,
Hmm.
um, and it's she hasn't changed. She's still absolutely mental, um, in the best way, and it's that's kind of what you want as a fan going to see these
Oh
people.
yeah.
Um, Scott
Another
Innes,
one that goes there too is I met Charo at Chiller, and she's equally as
yeah,
up for 11. Oh yeah.
yeah. Scott Innes, who voices Scooby Doo and among other things,
Yeah.
he's great. I met him at an event in December,
Hmm.
and he sings the songs and he does the voices, and I'm just like, that's the second I never really leave the table at an event, especially if we're busy. But I heard Scooby Doo, where are you? And immediately I clicked into I need to go over to that stage and figure out what this sound is. and he sung Yogi Bear and Flintstones, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, that is like you're drawn to that energy regardless of if you actually know any of these characters or not. Like I'm not a big voice actor person. I obviously I knew who he was from Scooby Doo and whatever, um, but it's I'm a horror guy. I grew up with Freddy Krueger to put me to sleep. Um, so it's like I don't really pay attention to a lot of these voice actors, and but whenever he started that panel and started singing, I was immediately drawn to whatever he was doing. And that's a lot like Felissa. You're immediately drawn to this energy, and you know, good on her, honestly. Um, Good on her to keep it up for 3 days a weekend, and not let it drop at all. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, I enjoy doing the cons. I've done four horror-ramas. I've done four Frightmare in the Falls. I've done one Toronto Comic Con, and I've done Chiller. So, and I'm hoping to do at least a couple in Toronto this year, you know. But before we get talking more about that, I would like to get a little bit of your background because I know Leslie. Leslie messaged me yesterday. Goes, "How did the interview go? How did the interview go?" I said, "He had a meeting, so we, you know."
Yeah,
Anyway,
because
uh,
we were meant to do it Monday and today's Wednesday.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So, but she had mentioned that you was a musician and that you got some degree in law, I believe it was.
yeah, so from the time I was 11, I
Hmm.
was making music. It wasn't great, but it was music, and it was relatively popular. Um, and I loved writing. Um, it was very creative therapy and all of that. Um, so I did that for a couple of years while I was in high school. And my high school was great. I love every single staff member who works there. Um, and it was very nurturing of that creativity, which I think is so important, to kind of help build upon what you already know, um, and build upon what you know about yourself. So yeah, I did that, and then after school, after high school, I studied events management, um, and got qualified in events management, and that's whenever convention started. And then boom, we hit 2020.
Yeah.
Um,
I worked through it because I'm a cleaner, but still, what a pain in the ass. And I still wanted to go back to the movie theater. I never got the illness, you know. So I was not one of these people. I was not avoiding people. I wasn't even trying to avoid people, you know. Um, I worked through it, so it was just another day for me. But that was a major pain in the ass anytime I wanted to go somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
so like 2020 hit, COVID locks everything down. There's no events. So London Film and Comic Con, we moved online. We were doing online sales of autographs that we had in stock. Um, and I was working those, but that was only, a couple of times a week.
Hmm.
And I thought this would be a great time to do law school.
You're
Um,
obviously smart if you can do that. I mean, in school, I wasn't very good. I used to put one and one together and get 11.
yeah, I used to get a window, so it's not great. Um, but yeah, I stuck with it even as things started opening up again.
Hmm.
Um, and I just got my law degree in like at the end of last year. Well, no, the end of last academic year, so May. Um, and I was waiting for the results to finalize and all of that, and I was checking my emails every day because that's how you find out whether or not got your degree. Um,
Well, I say congratulations, I think that's phenomenal. When I like she was giving me a little bit of background so I would know a little bit more about you,
yeah,
and it was like when I read that, I was like, "Holy shit, I'm dealing with a smart guy."
I would definitely say I am a very good examiner. I'm very good in exams. I'm very logical. I can analyze information really quickly and give an opinion on it, which is literally all law is. Um, and I was involved in politics for a while. Not
Well,
not
okay, can you get Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney and the Liberal government out of Canada, please? We don't like them.
um,
We don't want them here. Yeah, they've done everything to destroy Canada. I don't like them.
I mean, I try not to voice political opinions very often.
Oh, okay. Well, I
But
did.
yeah, but I come from Northern Ireland,
Mhm,
and the history of Northern Ireland is very political.
mhm.
Um, and so, it was only 2020 that homosexual marriage was legalized. And it was only 2020 that, that the process for women's bodily rights was formalized. And to be honest, I'm not going to voice my opinions on either of those topics, but my point is it was very behind the times. Everything kind of froze in the 60s, and we're just kind of getting back to it. And it's an amazing place to live. Leslie was here for a couple of weeks in November. We celebrated my birthday together.
Did she
Um,
have a hall pass?
we actually did make hall passes, and we sell those at events now.
I
Um,
told her, I said, start doing that.
funnily
Um,
enough, funnily enough, it was so I had come up with the idea, right, to create a hall pass, and I had already worked on the design. And Leslie did your podcast, and she messaged me afterwards, and she said, "What do you think about doing a hall pass?" And I was like, "Do you mean like this?" And I sent her the design.
oh, wow. You were thinking on the same wavelength. I got the idea because of the American Express cards Nancy McLaughlin had in her hand and Jason Lives when in the puddle,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
So
And
so
I,
that's what
yeah,
that's an interesting way that we kind of interacted like
I think
mind
that's awesome.
fuckingly before we ever knew each other. Um,
Yeah.
and we sell them. Um, and we were doing an event in Northern Ireland while she was here. Um, and they created trading cards like I don't know how um, Canadians refer to paper sizes, but it's like A5. So it's like half the size of a regular sheet of paper. Um, and I had her picture on it, and then like a little box for her to sign. And somebody came up and they had designed their own hall pass, um, with like a little stamp created using Leslie's face from the film. And I was like, that is badass. And I wish I had thought of the stamp because I would have sold the shit out of that. It's interesting how things kind of come together, and it was really hilarious to me that I had been working on the design, and then Leslie came off your podcast and texted me immediately after
I
and said, "Let's do a hall pass." And I sent her it, and I was like, "You mean like
great
this?"
minds think alike.
Yeah. So that's sort of my background. I came from music, then events, then COVID hit, and I decided this is the only time that I'm going to have enough free time to sort of work on something. Um, and so I joined university and it was all online. Um, and, I did everything. I did criminal law and got a distinction. I did civil law. I did contract law. I did evidence law. I did constitutional law. Um, and Leslie heard me bitching the entire way through. Um, Constitutional law was a headache. Um, but I would text Leslie and I'd be like, "Why do you guys have a constitution? Like, just get rid of it. There's no like, there's too much paper, and I'm sick of reading it." No, it's obviously really important, but I was just like, I this is the one module that I might fail. I didn't fail it, which is great. But yeah, and then I got my degree, which is
That's
currently
excellent.
framed.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's currently framed, but I have not put it up because, God forbid, I would actually have to go and get a hammer and nails and put it up. Um, ain't nobody got time for that, as the old meme went. Um,
I wanted
but
to
yeah,
ask you, I'm sorry, oh, I thought you had something else. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was
no,
going to
no.
ask you when you were a musician, what kind of music inspired you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm.
So I listened to everything growing up. My dad was very old school rock and roll, 50s rock, um, 50s sort of soul music,
Hmm.
uh, that sort of stuff. The boy bands, the girl bands of that era. My mum was the exact opposite. She listened to everything that was in the charts at the time. She was listening to a lot of early 2000s R&B, a lot of Neo, a lot of you know Usher, um, a lot of that sort of vibe. And then whenever I was starting to make music and think about music as a creative thing, I really got into a lot of country music. Um,
Okay.
uh, the way that people like Dolly Parton write, or people like Johnny Cash, June Carter Cash, all of these amazing songwriters,
Hmm.
um, who could tell a story in 2.5 minutes and make you wonder, what the hell you just sat through.
Make you
Um,
wonder why somebody would name their kid Sue?
exactly. Um, or
As
or
Johnny
where the
Cash said.
yeah, or where the hell is Jackson? Um, as Johnny Cash said. Um, it it's one of these things. There's, especially in Ireland, there's so much country music. Um, because obviously that's where a lot of country music inspiration comes from, is from the old world. And so there's a lot of great country singers here.
Hmm.
Um, and I was not one of them. No, I'm joking. I grew up around them,
Hmm.
from the time I was 11 the whole way through high school. I grew up around them, and a lot of them have gone on to work in Nashville and, to tour the world, and that's great for them. But I don't want to do 10-hour layovers, you know? um, so yeah, I would say a lot of the country music and a lot of the storytelling music, and sort of old. I'm an old soul, so a lot of the old music, um, everything I would have heard growing up, coming blasting from my dad's shed. Um, it's kind of interesting how that all came around again, and I listened to a lot of Brenda Lee, which is sort of 50s rock. Um, and I listened to Wanda Jackson, who was the queen of rockabilly, and a lot of Elvis Presley.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Did you have a favorite Elvis song?
So this is my personal story.
Mhm.
So when I was 17, um, I had just turned 17, or I just turned 18. No, I just turned 17. Um, and my dad passed away. So whenever he passed away, he was meant to come home at Christmas and he didn't. Um, and so we had decorated the whole living room with like Christmas trees, and we had put a CD player in the living room, and we'd put Elvis in the CD player so he could come home to Elvis. Um, and he didn't come home whenever he was meant to, but he came home the next day. Um, and whenever he died, the song "Can't Help Falling in Love with You" was playing. So for me, that song will always be my favorite Elvis song. But prior to that, it was "All Shook Up," because my dad would try and dance to it, and he just couldn't. Like my sister got married um, uh, years ago, and my dad was still alive, and they were doing the father daughter dance. My dad said the only way you're getting me to dance is if it's "All Shook Up" by Elvis. And he was living his best life, and afterwards I was like, he really can't dance. Like, he definitely has two left feet. um but yeah, so I liked "All Shook Up" for the longest time, just because you would hear it blasting from the shed, um or whenever he was like cooking dinner, you would hear it coming from the kitchen, and him trying to sing along. And you don't really try and sing along with Elvis because it doesn't really work. Um, you know, it's and he would sing from the kitchen and you would hear it, and so "All Shook Up" definitely. And then "Can't Help Falling in Love with You." I also really like um, "Wooden Heart," which is a slower sort of
I
love
think
song.
my favorite Elvis song is Bossa Nova Baby.
Okay, yeah,
It's a
that's
funny sounding song, but I was
yeah,
like,
that's a choice. To call it your favorite, that's definitely a choice.
I just always found it amusing.
Yeah, and then I remember being sort of an older teenager, probably 16 or 17, again, and going to a summer camp that we used to go to, which was all music. It was called Camp Rock, not the film Camp Rock. We didn't get paid quite that much, but we're going to this summer camp, and Patsy Cline came on shuffle on my phone.
Oh wow.
And my mum started singing along, and I was like, "How do you know this song?" And she said that her mum used to sing it whenever she was growing up. So her mum would be singing along to, the radio. Um, and my mum grew up during the conflict in Northern Ireland. So, the radio was sort of how you had fun during the weird times. And she remembers her mum singing the songs, and um, so it was really interesting to me. Patsy Cline is a huge part of my inspiration as well. Um, just for the vocals, it's like, how can you stand and sing like that? Um, and hearing that it goes back that far for our family was very interesting to me. So yeah, those are my inspirations. Everybody, literally everybody.
Let's talk conventions, because those are really fun. And
Yeah, because that's what I
I,
do.
yeah, well, you mentioned you went to that one that later was canceled. Who was the first person you met at a con?
Oh, I think, if I'm not wrong, it might have been Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the wrestler, who is amazing and he is such a nice guy. Um, the only time I ever went to a convention as a fan was to meet him. Um, but I think, the first year I was there, the first year I was at London, I met Matthew Lillard, um, who, is great and is at every event. And it's amazing to see him, working all the time. Same with Felissa. It's amazing to see her working all the time. I met, um,
Did
I think,
Hacksaw Jim Duggan fight Felissa as Angela?
you see, that would have been something to watch.
My money would be
Um,
on Angela, though. I don't. Now, if it was the Iron Sheik, I'd probably say Angela would lose.
yeah, you know,
Have
he plays dirty. That's the one thing.
you
Hacksaw Jim
seen any
Duggan is
of the
very.
have you seen any of the wrestling interviews I've done?
I have not.
Okay. Um, I do tribute interviews when people have passed away, you know.
Yeah,
I've had Alfred Hitchcock's granddaughter on here. I've had Audrey Hepburn's eldest son on here. Um, but I've had Roddy Piper's son and daughter on here after he passed away, and I'm still in touch with his daughter Ariel, whose ring name is Teal Piper, and she's gorgeous, you know. And well, his son and daughter, they've got a lot of his energy, I'll tell you that.
yeah,
But I have Teal on here every year, and I've had Princess Victoria on here 4 times. And originally I didn't know who she was. I wanted to get Velvet McIntyre on here because I loved her growing up.
yeah,
And Velvet's got issues with her hearing, but Princess Victoria was running the Facebook page. And I ended up checking out Princess Victoria, and I was like, holy cow. Because Velvet McIntyre and Princess Victoria pretty much did all the stuff you're seeing done today by the female wrestlers. They were that I seen Velvet hit a cross body where she spun around in circles as she hit her opponent a crossbody. And the only other person I've seen do that is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He's the
yeah.
only other one I've seen do that. But I've had Princess Victoria on here 4 times, and boy, does she have stories, you know.
Yeah,
I've had Larry Zabisco on here.
that's a name.
I love
That's
Bruno Sammartino. And he
yeah,
told a lot of Bruno stories, you know.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I'm a fan of that sort of old school style of wrestling as well. I love, you know, the Attitude Era stuff, which, is old school for me because I wasn't born yet. But
I like 60s, 70s, and 80s wrestling. That was my favorite era of wrestling. Like to me, you know, Bruno to me is was the ultimate champion. You know, I love Roddy Piper. I'm a big fan of Jake the Snake Roberts, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. You know, um, uh, folks like that. I always like to watch Terry Funk. I think was terrific.
yeah, Terry
You know,
Funk is a legend.
well,
Um,
Terry, you know, could wrestle any style of match. He
yeah,
could do a technical match. He could do a brawling match. He could do a hardcore match. He could do whatever it is you needed. And it didn't matter whether he won or lost. You were talking about him when the match was done. And that's what made Terry so good. But I've had a few of the wrestling personalities on here. Now, I noticed on your let me look at your talent roster because you got wrestling on here. Let's look at some of these.
these are my independent wrestlers who are all very talented. Um, Hayden Morgan was undefeated for the longest time, and she's a very good friend of mine. She's the same; she can wrestle anything. You can put her in a technical match, and she will literally make you cry. Um, her chops are like nothing else. Um, and it's so funny. People say wrestling is fake, and I have taken a Hayden Morgan chop, and
Tell that to Haku.
Exactly. Tell that to Haku.
Well, I'll
Um,
tell you one thing. Here's the difference between, I mean, Shawn Michaels may have been a champion in the ring, but he was an absolute pussy outside it. And Shawn Michaels got his ass handed to him by a Marine. Haku, on the other hand, won his bout against the Marine. And I heard Harley
yeah,
Race was another one who was really tough, you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
Andre the Giant. You hear the stories of Andre the Giant lifting cars because people were throwing things at him.
yeah.
Um, and his story is actually really heartbreaking, um, but really interesting as well.
And it's funny because um, Vince McMahon likes. I'm glad the internet is around because you get to see what some of these wrestlers are outside of WWE. Because Hulk Hogan was not the first to slam Andre the Giant. You go back.
WrestleMania 3 wasn't even the first time that Hulk Hogan had
No,
slammed Andre
Showdown
the
in
Giant.
Shea, yeah. Because Harley Race and Antonio Inoki slammed Andre back in the 70s, and Andre was still really big then.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
and I heard someone say once, I think it was Hacksaw, said you couldn't slam Andre if Andre didn't want you to slam Andre. And Andre, without a doubt, really catapulted Hulk to infamy whenever he let Hulk Hogan slam him. Um, there's so much controversy about Hulk at the minute, for the last
Yeah.
10 years or so. Uh, so I won't go too much into him, but for Andre to like allow that to happen, because let's be real, at his size, if he didn't want you to pick him up, you weren't picking him up.
Let me tell you a story. Colt and Ariel told this story when I had them on to talk about Roddy Piper. They said that Andre and Piper had something that they did. When Andre got a little tired, he would sit down in the corner and Piper would just wail on him,
Yeah, yeah,
and on like it would just Andre would be taking a rest. And it was interesting the communication there, But we talked a little bit about Andre the Giant in that interview, but I'm looking at these Hayden Morgan, Valerie Windham. You got a couple of
so
pretty females there.
Valerie is SoCal Val. She was a TNA manager. She worked on Progress Wrestling. She worked, which is a WWE brand. I
Uh-huh.
believe she worked on World of Sport, which is a huge UK promotion. She worked on its revival. Um, she lives in the UK now, and she actually does these things for a living, these conventions. She goes to all of Monopoly events shows, who run like Comic Con Liverpool, for the love of wrestling, all of these huge Comic Cons, and she is their stage host. So she does a lot of that now.
Wow.
And, you know, every so often I will message her. We actually met at London. She was a stage host then as well for Showmasters. And during her like time where she wasn't on stage, she was signing autographs.
Hmm.
Um, and I was working the event, and I went up to her just to say hello.
Uh-huh.
And she was so sweet, and her husband is so nice. And whenever I started my agency, she actually messaged the agency page, and I didn't know, like, she didn't know who I was from the agency
Uh-huh.
because, as you probably know, there is nothing of me like connected to the agency. It's all very separate. The Instagram doesn't like I don't post pictures of me every week. It's
Oh,
more so
we're gonna get Leslie Hoffman to take care of that.
it's mostly the talent and the conventions that they're at and sort of promoting them. we have quite a large platform, so it's nice to be able to promote them. Um, so yeah, Val is going to be doing Shrewsbury Comic Con in England, July 19th. Um, she'll be signing all day, which is nice for Val because it's quite different than hosting events, like hosting the Q&A panels. Um, but yeah, Hayden Morgan is an absolute badass.
He looks
Um,
badass. Do you think they come on the podcast here?
I mean, I think Hayden definitely would. She has, stories upon stories to
You know
share.
what? I would have her on. I'm gonna look her up to watch some of her matches, but I'd have her on just by her appearance. She looks badass.
She is
I wouldn't fight with
terrifying.
her.
She is terrifying. And then she takes off the makeup and she is the loveliest human being. Um, well, um, well, can't really give too much away. She is a really badass wrestler, and a really badass friend as well. She's really, hardcore ride or die sort of friend.
Oh, I
Um,
love that. She's
and
got two
Jordan Sweet,
belts strapped over his shoulder there. Well, that's a
and
great
one around her
photo.
waist, and one around her
Yeah.
waist. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't
one
forget the
around her
one around
waist.
her waist.
Yeah.
She held three championships at one time. She One is a tag team championship. The other two are singles championships. She is really well respected here. Um, for her work ethic. She's a heel. She's a bad guy, but she is, her talent is undeniable. Um, and the fact she literally puts her body on the line whenever she goes out on into the ring. She's not scared to, take a kendo stick across her back, or I have a picture somewhere of um, my friend Jordan, who um, is also one of my clients, Jordan Sweet. He's a wrestler as well, and they had a match a couple of years ago. Um, and afterwards, his back was tore up from taking the kendo stick, and I was like, that is true dedication
You know
to
what Terry Funk would say? Terry Funk would say, walk it off.
exactly, and that's what he did. He got up, he put some salt on that bitch, and he continued. You know what I mean? Um, and they're great. I love independent promotions like that. I
I
sponsor that
like
promotion.
having a lot of them on here too. Like I've had through Teal Piper, I come in contact with Jerry Swirls, who had worked with him, and I thought he was really funny. And he was a heel wrestler, but he was one of these heel wrestlers that were very comical.
Yeah,
And I've had him on here a few times. Um, a lot of them that one of the things I love is looking at some of the independents and seeing some of the ones that may not be mainstream, but it's like Hayden there. I really kind of want to check her out just based on that photo. Like I
Hayden
don't think I'd walk across her in an alley. She looks intimidating.
doesn't she? And she is, she is about average height, but her presence is so massive. And she, like, the company that she helped found is called Stay True Wrestling.
Hmm.
Um, and their like motto is wrestling's for everyone. So, they don't judge based on your appearance. If you can wrestle, you can wrestle. And I sponsor I've sponsored a couple of their events now. Um, and their energy with the audience is perfect. And everyone in the audience either loves or hates them. But at the end of the day, everyone there is reacting, and that's exactly what they want. It's not like these large events, these large wrestling events where you might sit there and none of the talent that comes out even recognize you. You know what I mean? Um, you're just another person in a crowd, um, which obviously isn't their fault. There's 10,000 people there, but the great thing about indies is that they come out and every single person they're gauging their reaction, and they know what to do to really put their character over. And Hayden is great at that. Hayden will react to crowds, and if there's a kid in the crowd that's booing her, Hayden will react. Um, and if somebody in the crowd shouts something, Hayden will respond. And it's great, like sitting there as her friend, but also as her agent, and seeing it and knowing that she is, you know, doing this thing that she loves, but also the fans are eating it up, you know?
Has she ever put you in the camel clutch and made you humble?
No, but she did chop with me. She did chop me, okay? And her chop is awful. I, yeah, she was training us, and everybody who she was training had to take a chop, right? And so she chops everybody. She doesn't work it. It's not a worked chop. You're taking the chop. You know what I mean? And she just lays one in, and oh my god, every single person wanted to cry.
You want me to
Um,
tell you a little story? This just reminded me of something. Teal Piper, her partner is Deimos, or the House of Heathens. And Deimos was trained by Roddy and various others. And
yeah,
they were talking about the famous dog collar match that Roddy Piper and Greg the Hammer Valentine had at Starcade. And
whoa.
she has got that she has got the dog collar in her garage.
See,
But
I think that's cool.
oh yeah, well,
I
she's
think
got
that's
it.
awesome.
But here's the thing. Damos ended up in a position where he was wrestling Greg Valentine. And Greg Valentine he's now 73 years old, you know.
Yeah.
I think he was in his 60s when Damos wrestled him. Valentine likes to wrestle stiff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's stories about him and Ronnie Garvin just chopping each other. And
Yeah.
I've heard both of them talk about the fact that they loved wrestling each other because they would really hit each other, you know? Well, apparently in this match, Damos didn't want to hurt Valentine. And at one point in the match, Damos said they were in the corner, and Valentine said, "Hey, you hit like a little bitch."
Yeah. That doesn't even surprise me. Because if you don't go full blast, fans are going to shout bullshit. Like it's going to happen. ECW made it very, very expected of the fans to call you on your bullshit. Um, and watching Hayden, I am literally like I will cringe whenever she punches someone or slaps someone because I know that person is taking the full force of her hand. Um, or there was an event last weekend, and Hayden was wrestling, and Hayden's sister was wrestling, and they were whacking the out of each other with like kendo sticks, so like bamboo sticks. And I was sitting in the corner, and I was almost like vomiting because I know that they're whacking the shit out of each other. There's no bullshit about it. They are whacking each other. Like they are taking that thing and hitting each other so hard that you can hear the cracks of the bamboo. And I was like, oh god.
Let's talk about some of your acting talent. Now, I believe Brandy Roderick was at Chiller last year.
Randy, was it Chiller? She's at Chiller again. No, I don't think it's Chiller
You
this
know
year.
what? I didn't get to meet her. I'm going to tell you, my biggest thing with the cons is I spend way too much money because I like to give out my business card, which is something else Lisa advised me to do. And when I don't like just giving out my business cards. If I meet somebody, I want to buy something off their table, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember one year at Frightmare in the Falls, I met about 30 guests. At Chiller, I think I met 21, and I'm like, oh, that was hard on my pocketbook. So I'm trying to simmer it down. I never got to meet Brandy, and I heard so many nice things about her.
Brandy is an amazing human, like just a really nice soul.
Hmm.
Um, and she did online autograph sales with us, and she did. She's at Chiller, she's at New Jersey. She's a really sweet human and really talented. Um, like she just directed and produced a film called Wineville, um, and it's great. Like it's nice to see her working. Um, yeah, I love all of my talent. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, Brandy is great. Um, Leslie is awesome. I love Leslie. Leslie is that one person that like I will go to bat for anytime.
How did you
Um,
meet Leslie?
oh, so this is not an interesting story.
Oh,
uh, we added each other on Facebook, right?
okay.
And originally there was nothing meant by it. I was just adding Leslie because, she's Leslie.
Hmm.
Um, and she messaged me and she said, "Do you book conventions?" And I was like, "Yes, that is what I do as a job." Um, and she was like, "Would you like to sign me?" Um, and I was like, "Are you insane?" Of course I would. Um, and Leslie is great, and I have been working with her now for nearly a year. Um, and she's exclusive with us. She signed a management deal in November. Whenever she was here,
Hmm.
she is the biggest sweetheart. She has not had an easy go of it in Hollywood, um,
Nope.
but she is one of the kindest, most
Hmm.
caring people you'll ever meet, um, and she's funny. Like Leslie has stories about people, everyone from Ricardo Montalban to Robert England, and those are two very different people. And it's hearing about her coming up with Tom Morga and Dick Warlock. Um,
I've had Dick Warlock on here.
I love Dick. I love Tom. Tom is one of Leslie's very dearest friends. Um, and if Leslie trusts you, then you're all good in my book.
Hmm.
Um, and speaking of books, Leslie and I are actually working on one. Um, this is the spoiler because I think I don't think I've mentioned it before. Um,
Oh,
so we are working on a book of her life and her career. Um, that's kind of a no holds barred book. Um, so it's called "Where's Your Pass?" The life and career of Leslie Hoffman. Um,
yeah.
we really are milking the shit out of that one line, aren't we?
Why
Um,
not? You know, why not?
and the book will talk about growing up in a small town in northern New York, um, being the one of the only Jewish families in that community, um, going to school in northern New York, deciding she wanted to be an actress, um, realizing that acting is boring, deciding that she wanted to fall off shit instead. It'll go through all of that, and then we will get to all of the controversies that happened with SAG, and we get to her discussions about the Twilight Zone incident, um,
Oh, yeah.
which Leslie was involved in after the fact. Um, as because anyone who knows Leslie knows that she was on the board of directors of SAG, and she was the head of stunt safety at the time, and so she was involved in the aftermath of that and trying to, you know, I think it was the San Francisco government wanted to create more, like the California government wanted to create more legislation or something, and she was called to testify. Um, and she just let them have it. She was just like no holds barred, like Leslie is. Leslie will say whatever is on her mind, and I will be sitting behind her going, "Why would you say that in public? Oh my god!" Um, but she's amazing, and she really is an advocate for people. She an advocate for stunt women, an advocate for stunt people. Like Leslie will see all of the stuff going on, whether it's the Alec Baldwin situation, and Leslie will voice her opinion on it. And it's an opinion based on years of her expertise. Um, but I'll still sit there and be like, Leslie, please don't comment on things that are that like relevant publicly right now. Please like think about this before you post this. Um, but she's amazing. And the fact that she is, putting that out there and putting her expertise out there and doing these podcasts. And I'm like, Leslie, it helps to like leave some space in between podcasts so that you have something to promote. And she's like, but I'm promoting myself. And I'm like, okay, we'll schedule another podcast. Um, and she loves people. And she was here in Northern Ireland, and we went to do a talk in a high school. She went to talk to high school students about her career and about Hollywood and about the weirdness that comes with it, and the stories of her career. And we went and we did uh, an event at a place called Harry's Mates, which is um, an organization, a charity that helps um, people with learning disabilities and autism, helps them sort of, live their life. They give them jobs, and you know, there's just social events, and they invited Leslie to speak to the members, and it was amazing. I spent my birthday there, um, my 25th birthday. I spent it with them, and I wouldn't have changed that. Leslie, being around Leslie and these people, it was amazing to see, these people react to Leslie being there and actually taking the time to go there, because like it wasn't a paid event.
Mhm.
Leslie wasn't being paid to be there. It was just Leslie. And like, Leslie will do anything people ask. And sometimes I have to be like, this is worth money. um, but that's my job. Leslie shouldn't have to worry about that. Um, and none of my talent should have to worry about that. They should show up, look pretty, sign autographs, and go home with money in their pocket. That is their job. And I recently signed. By recently, I mean like in the last 6 months. Um, I signed David Deloise, who people would know from Wizards of Waverly Place, but he was also in Third Rock from the Sun, and he was in Pop Stars. He's done so much, right? And obviously his dad is Dom DeLuise, um,
Uh,
who is a legend. And I recently signed Jennifer Stone, who worked with David in Wizards of Waverly Place. And Jennifer has never done a convention ever. She didn't she never did them while she was on Wizards as a teenager. She hasn't done them since. Um, and David had reached out to her and said, "There's this guy that I'm working with, and he's not a bad guy." Talking about me.
mhm.
I'm sure he said other great things, about how much money we made and all of that. But the core of it is this guy is someone who has your best interests, regardless, right? And Jennifer and I got connected. And I said to her, my I don't promise you work because I can't, but I promise you that I work, and without, like, I don't get paid unless you get paid. So there's no incentive for me to not promote you and not have your best interests in heart. And she's going to be doing her first event in May, in Germany.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and she is a lovely human being. She is so down to earth. And she came from the Disney world. She's a child star, but you wouldn't know it. She's so humble. And um, she actually works as an ER nurse, in an emergency room in California. So she's like, she's giving, like, she's saving lives every day. And then in her free time, she's going to be coming to Germany to do an event. Um, and people are so excited to finally get their chance to meet her, because Wizards kind of defined a generation of Disney kids. Um, so it's nice that she, I always, like I've said to her a couple of times, I appreciate that she put the trust in me to do this first event. Um, and that's all that I really want, is I want people to experience the convention industry. And it's not, I know I've mentioned money a few times in this, but it's not about money. um, Realistically, a lot of my talent will do charitable things more so than make the big bucks at these huge corporate conventions that you get 30 seconds with the talent at. um, and it's Leslie signed a bunch of stuff, and I can donate any of that stuff anytime to
Hmm.
charitable events or raffles or whatever. David Deloise, I have a folder full of 8x10s signed by him that I can just donate. If a charity comes to me and wants me to, want something donated, they can raffle off. I have a bunch of stuff from a bunch of my talent, and people don't see that side of it. And that is the talent I enjoy working with, is the talent who are so giving of their time and their energy. Um, like, I enjoy being able to pick up the phone and ask a talent if they would mind filming a video for whatever it is. Leslie did one for the 40th anniversary screening of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Um, and, she doesn't have to, she's not getting paid for it, but it's those little things that create a deeper connection with the fan.
Yeah.
Um, and Leslie's great at it. Most of my talent are really down to earth and humble. I would say all of them, but some of them I haven't worked with in person yet, so I don't know that. I'm still working on getting them booked.
I've
Uh,
had Francis Lee McCain on here
Frances
from
is
Grantland.
Frances is insanely prolific.
Hmm.
She's done everything. She is Stand by Me, Footloose, Gremlins,
Gremlins,
Back to
yeah.
the Future. She, it's this ever growing list of things that she did. Even Scream, like, she's in Scream as Dewey's mom. Um, so it's like she's always the mom, but she's in everything. You know what I mean? Her credit
Hmm.
list is insane. And I did not sign her to the company. It was one of my partners, one of my business people, one of the people who work with my business. Um, his name's Jacob. He now runs a different agency called JMP, and
Hmm.
he signed Francis whenever he was working with me. And Francis, I actually remember messaging him and being like, "Is this Francis Lee McCain from Stand by Me?" And he's like, "Yes, it's Francis Lee McCain from Back to the Future." And I was like, "Wait, this lady has done everything, you know?" Um, and I had met her like years ago at London, and I think Dee Wallace was there as well.
I've
Um,
had D on here a couple
so
times. Yeah.
it's like the moms of horror.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Um, so it's great whenever people are people. Because Francis did your show,
Yeah.
and again, this is another example. We don't get paid. Like I'm not getting paid to sit here and talk to you.
I don't
We
get
are
paid either.
exactly.
Yep.
We are doing
I
this
get
because
paid. Yeah.
we love the industry.
Yeah.
Um, and Frances is amazing. She, like I say, she has done everything. Natasha's amazing. I know Natasha was on your show.
Jeffrey
Jeffrey
Wiseman was on
Wiseman.
my show.
Jeffrey Wiseman is prolific as well. I met him in London a few
Hmm.
years ago, probably just after COVID. I think we were still in the weird sort of phase where everyone was wearing masks and trying not to touch people. Which I mean, you shouldn't touch people at a convention anyway.
Hmm.
Um, keep your hands to yourself. Um, but it's like he came up to the table I was working at. Um, I was working with the DeLorean car, and he came up whenever Claudia Wells was doing her photo shoot, and it was just a nice, conversation between them. And Christopher Lloyd was there, who's also amazing. He is one of the funniest people you'll ever meet. Um, so it was just, people, like I said, people in this industry should remember that at the end of the day, it is the fan who keeps you going. Um, Without fans requesting talent, a lot of the time the promoters aren't interested. Um, and the talent, a lot of the talent loves doing them. I know I see comments all the time about, oh, he must be getting paid X amount. And I'm like, he probably is, but he's still giving his time. And you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, a convention is never going to pay more than a movie role. You know what I mean? So for an actress or an actor to take time out of whatever they're doing in their life to do a convention is huge. And even people like Leslie, who are retired from acting through no fault of her own, just years and years of falling off shit, as I say. Um, and this is her conventions are her bread and butter. But she, if you ever meet her at a convention, she will sit and talk to you for as long as you want to talk. She might ask you to repeat yourself 10 times, but she will sit and talk to you. Um, and she is lovely, and Felicia's lovely, and all of these people you see at conventions, 9 out of 10 of them are just really amazing people.
Talk
Jeff
about John Lovas. You got him enlisted here.
John Lovitz, we work with another agent for him.
Hmm.
So he'll be doing, oh, I can't say that yet, it hasn't been announced. He'll be doing an event pretty close to you, um, pretty soon. And we booked him for that. Again, Jacob brought him on board. Um, and it's John Lovitz.
Hmm.
For me, it's Benchwarmers. I know a lot of people at Saturday Night Live or um, The Simpsons or The Critic, I think is the other one. Um, for me, it's Benchwarmers with David Spade and John Heder,
Hmm.
um, and Rob Schneider. For me, that's John Lovitz. Um, Dorian Gregory is another one I just signed. He was Detective Darrell Morris. Darrell Morris. I am saying that right. It's just my accent. In the '90s show Charmed.
Yep.
So he was in, I think it was 3 seasons of Charmed. And then he hosted Soul Train. And recently he was the voice of Darth Vader in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Um, and he's starting to get into conventions again. so he's working with us, and
And
hopefully he'll show up all over the world.
you got Leslie Scribble from Village of the Damned.
Leslie and Terry Ann and Martin Stevens from Village of the Damned. Um, Leslie and Terry Ann are twins. And
Wow.
Martin is obviously the little boy from Village of the Damned. Um, he was voted, I think, Britain's best child actor of the 60s, um, which is huge because everyone was an actor in the 60s apparently.
Hmm.
Um, and they're all lovely. I met them at London originally, and they heard my accent, and they are Irish. Leslie and Terry Ann are Irish. Um, they live in England, but they're Irish, and they heard it. Like whenever I was yelling at people to hurry up in the line, um, or the queue, and it was they came up to me and they were like, "Where are you from?" And I was like, "I'm from Ireland," and they were like, "We are too. Whereabouts?" And so we had that conversation, and it was a nice sort of like, oh yeah, this is nice. Um, and whenever I started my agency, we got reconnected. We never really lost touch. I've been talking to Leslie since then, and we got connected again. And I was like, "Do you want to hopefully try and work?" And they signed with us, and they are the sweetest human beings, despite being terrifying as kids. Um, for anyone who doesn't know Village of the Damned, obviously the children's eyes are, what you don't look into. Um, and they had pictures from the show at their table, from the movie at their table, um, and I swear it was terrifying. Uh, and then I think John Carpenter made a reboot at some point. Um, but the original Hammer horror, Village of the Damned, is kind of you know unreal. I actually have the DVD sitting next to me, um, just randomly. I don't know why. I haven't watched it in a while, but it is there. So is Scream 2, which is Leslie's film, um, and Nightmare on Elm Street is also there. Um, and then behind me is the glove.
There you go.
Yeah, which Leslie kindly signed for me while she was here. Um, it's I'm a collector at heart. Sorry, a hoarder. Um,
Hmm.
but it's Leslie did a lot for me that week. That week while she was here, she did a lot of. She was here for 2 weeks. She met with my family. She, spent time with us as a family. Um, she really became part of our family that weekend. That time while she was here. Um, she's great. And just because I see it out of the corner of my eye, that is the hall pass.
Look at that.
So these ones are like
Yeah,
proof.
I told her to get a whole lot of those for Heather Camp.
I seen a picture of Heather at an event. I don't know what event, but she had hall passes on her table,
She
and
should.
across them it said "Screw your pass," and I was like, that is genius, um, because she's building off of what we do. I don't know that she ever seen what we do, but she's building off of what we do, and she's adding her line to it. Um, and that's genius. I know Leslie did Horror Hound last year, in
Hmm.
September. It wasn't booked by me, but she did Horror Hound, and Heather was there, and Amanda was there, and Tony
I've had
Caesar was
Amanda
there.
on here once. Um,
I love
from
Amanda. Amanda
he was on
is
here to promote the id with the director of that. I
oh
would have loved
wow.
to have gotten her back on, but I don't know if she's interested or not. But
Amanda is. you know, not just legendary, but if you see Amanda at an event near you, you should definitely meet her because her stories are insane. She a lot like Robert, she kind of like was thrust into this thing not knowing what it was going to do.
Hmm.
And it kind of kickstarted an empire. New Line Cinema is always referred to as the house that Freddie built. And I agree with that. Without New Line Cinema, without Freddie, New Line Cinema would never have gotten into production. Um, and I reached out to Sarah Risher, who was a producer at New Line Cinema, um, and she worked on the Nightmare films, and she was there at the time before the films. Um, and I thought she would have been great at cons. Her name is on every one of the posters for the films. She was in New Nightmare. It didn't work out, but it's for me. I love the below the line, like the behind the scenes people, um, and Jeffrey Reddick, who I was talking about earlier, the creator of Final Destination. He's obviously below the line in that he's a writer, but then he worked at New Line Cinema for 10 years before writing Final Destination. Um, and then Final Destination came out, and obviously it spawned a franchise, and the next one is coming out this year. Um, and you know, I call New Line Cinema the house that Freddie built and the house that Jeffrey continued, because like that film has made $650 million or something, like an insane amount of money. Um, and they don't have merch. I was on the phone with Jeffrey the other day, and I was like, you managed to create the one horror franchise that doesn't have Funko Pops, doesn't have action figures, doesn't have T-shirts, doesn't have, because there's no killer, so there's no Jason to put on the action figure. There's no Michael Myers to put on the T-shirt. You know what I mean? And I was saying to him, you managed to create the one franchise that I can't make a fortune off of. Because that's where we make our money is the merchandise. But yeah, I feel like I've rambled a lot.
Oh, I love hearing the stories. I was going to ask, what are some of the most have you ever seen any really interesting things that happened at cons, like things that just stand out, like, oh, I remember this happening, or something of that nature.
Yeah, so I actually have a couple of stories. I was at an event in Pennsylvania
Okay.
called Horror on Main, and their whole thing is that everything is based off of literature, right? So it's like a movie based on a book or a comic book that turned into a video game or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
And my client, Jeff Goodwin, was there. And Jeff is lovely. I love him. He worked on things like Blue Velvet and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He was a makeup artist and special effects artist. And he worked on the 2022 version of Scream, right? So the one that was
Okay.
filmed during COVID. And that film is probably best remembered now for killing off David Arquette. Spoiler alert. Um, but he brought with him the knife that killed David Arquette. So he still had, the prop that killed David Arquette. Um,
I was just there for Jenna Ortega.
um, but yeah, so he brought that, and obviously people are mad that David Arquette was killed, and all of this. People wish that he had like continued on. Um, so I was like, if I were you, I would not take that out this entire weekend. Just leave it in your suitcase. Don't bring it to the convention. Um, but he did, and I was hosting a Q&A panel at that event with him on it, and Genevieve Buckner, who was Ashley Graham in Resident Evil, Daniel Serra, who was an artist. He's so talented. He like created art for some of the Stephen King books and things. Um, Richard Band, who is a composer.
Yep, met
Um,
him.
yeah, he's great. He's a really down to earth guy. We had dinner after the event, um, and we were hosting this panel, and I said to them, "All of you have worked with Stephen King, right? Because they had all worked on Stephen King projects." And I was like, "Can you share your Stephen King story?" And we go down the line, and Jeff had worked with Stephen King a hell of a lot of times, right? Um, in fact, he worked on Mr. Mercedes, which is a Stephen King project. And in that TV show, Stephen King plays a character and he gets killed. And Jeff Goodman calls himself the guy who killed Stephen King, um, because he did the makeup and the props and all of that. Um, and we get down the line and we get to Genevieve, and Genevieve looks at me, and Genevieve is one of my clients now, but she looks at me. She wasn't at this time. She looks at me and she goes, "Can you remind me what project I worked on with Stephen King?" And I was like, "Honey, it's your resume." I just wrote down the questions. Like I don't remember. Um, and I was flying back home from Pennsylvania after that. And I was in, I think it was Philly Airport. I went into one of the stores in duty free, because I had a layover, and I came across this book, and it was Dead Zone by Stephen King. And I took a picture of the book and I sent it to her, and she was like, "That's the movie I was in," and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, it was." um, Another story: I was working at this one event, and Meatloaf was there. Um, Obviously Meatloaf is known as a singer, but also
Hmm.
he was in Rocky Horror Picture Show and Fight Club and Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny.
I've had
Um,
Little Nell on here from Fight or from Rocky Horror.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and he was doing a photo shoot. And at this point, he was, older, and had limited mobility. So he was riding a mobility scooter to get around the venue because it's a massive venue. Like I could have used one at the end of the weekend, you know what I mean? Um, and he came into the photo shoot area, and somebody shouted from the line, "What would you do for love?" Right? Um, and Meatloaf stood up from his mobility scooter, pointed back, and shouted, "I won't do that," and walked out of the photo shoot. And I, obviously not getting the joke at first, I was like, "Is he going to come back? Because there is like 300 people here waiting for their photo to be taken." But he did come back. It was, a joke. Um, and he sat down in his mobility scooter. No, I think they moved the mobility scooter and he sat on like a chair for the photo shoot. And people were coming up, and he was so great with everybody who came up. Um, and it's weird that that's what I remember. The for me, it's always about the interaction between people. Um, and so, like the Meatloaf story, I remember really vividly. Um, I remember Ali from Ali and AJ, who was also in iZombie. She was at that same event, and she, at the end of the weekend, she came up and she gave me a hug, and she was like, "Thank you for looking after me this weekend." And I was like, "I have seen you a grand total of one time this entire weekend, but thank you for remembering me." you
I
know, it's the little things like that
yeah.
kind of stand out in my brain.
I was wondering too, you've got a lot of clientele on your list that I would love to have come on the show. Do I just reach out to you for that?
That's probably the best way. Some of them don't do podcasts. They don't have time mostly.
Who
Um,
doesn't do a podcast?
like Val is very busy,
Okay.
SoCal Val, so she's just not available. Um, a lot of the time. You can sometimes get like the one day of the week where she has a little bit of time. Uh,
Well, Hayden, I definitely am interested in. Um,
yeah, Hayden would. I'm sure Hayden would love to do a podcast. She has, like I say, so many stories of sort of that industry, and the injuries and the. Let me think. Who else does podcasts? David Deloise, I'm sure, would love to do it. Um, he had a podcast of his own with Jennifer Stone for a while,
mhm,
but they're taking a bit of a break. He has his own cafe as well. He has a cafe called the Bigfoot Cafe in Pine Mountain, California, I think it is. And it's a little like independent cafe. It's not like a Starbucks. It's like very, very similar to what I would have in the town I live in, or I'm sure you living in a small town as well. Um, it's the mom and pop sort of cafes. Um, so he's great, and he is a lovely guy to talk to. Um, and again, he has stories of like, his uncle, his godfather is Mel Brooks. Um, he grew up around Burt Reynolds and all of these amazing talent that aren't around anymore, especially people like Burt Reynolds, um, or his dad, Dom DeLuise.
mhm.
And then his brother was in 21 Jump Street with Johnny Depp. And it's he has sort of these like weird moments where he tells like the funniest story and then just reverts back to what he was talking about. And I'm like, I would love to understand how your brain works. Um, but he's amazing. He'll like send me a message, like a video message. Um, and in the message, he'll ask a question, say, you know, what time is my flight for this event, right? And he'll
Mhm.
literally say, what time is my flight for FedCon in Germany? Question mark. I would like to know so I can plan my travel? Question mark. And I'm like, David, I am watching video of you. You don't have to say question mark. I know it's a question. And I love him. He did an event with me in October um, in Pleasant Valley, Missouri, um, called BadCon. And I reached out to him and asked him to do the promo videos for the event. And in one of them, he literally goes, "Why is it called BadCon? Why is it not called GoodCon?" And I'm like, David, like the dad jokes are real. um, but yeah, and then we met in person at BadCon, and immediately we both fell in love with each other in a non um in a completely platonic, non-weird way. um we were immediately drawn to each other. We have a lot in common, um a lot of the same, I don't want to say the same life experiences, but a lot of the same situations, and a lot of things that we can relate to about each other. And he's amazing. And he's another one that, like, when he's at an event, he is down to do anything. You know what I mean? He
Mhm.
he did a podcast at that event. He disappeared, and I was like, "Where is my client?" And the promoter was like, "Oh, he's over at one of the tables doing a podcast." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, as long as he hasn't left the venue, we're fine. Um, and he started TikToking live. During, like, sitting at his table, he was interacting with the people who were there, but then also taking questions from the live stream, and he was talking about everything. And he during his Q&A, he picked someone from the audience who asked a question, and he signed a copy of his dad's cookbook and gave it to him. Um, so it's like, these little things that clients do that like make the show more fun for all of us. Um, it's great. It's this is the life. Um, there's a lot of moments where it's like, do I really want to sit on an airplane for 10 hours to get to America? Um, but then I get there and I'm like, you know what, let's just like go full throttle and make this an event that everyone will remember. And that's sort of what I try to do because, again, coming from the events management side, I understand every piece of work that has gone into making that event work. Um, and then coming from the agent side, I'm like, I understand everybody in this line wants to meet the talent and deserves the best experience they can have, whether they're paying for an autograph or, you know, just want to come up and say hi. They deserve an experience. Um, and that's why, to be honest with you, a lot of the time, if I'm at an event with my talent and they're not busy, talk to them. They're bored. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be buying 10 autographs to have a conversation. Um, if they're not busy, they're not busy. Like, go up and have a conversation, um, talk about the films, talk about whatever. And because at the end of the day, they're getting paid regardless. They're getting paid a guarantee regardless. And if if they're sitting there and there's no one in their line, they're just sitting there, and nobody likes just sitting there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So talk to them. Go up and talk to Leslie. Go up and talk to Jeffrey. Go up and talk to David Deloise. Like, these people have stories that none of us can comprehend. Like the you know, Leslie talking about Leslie Nielsen on Airplane, or Naked Gun. I'm sorry. And Leslie talking about Ricardo Montalban and Dennis Madelon, and it's just like I'm sitting there and I'm like, do you want to name drop some more? Or David Deloise talking about Johnny Depp, and I'm like, that name just came out of your mouth like nothing. Like, there's no impact to that name. Um, and it's nice to just hear the stories. You know, I'm a fan of especially old Hollywood, um, like the 60s, 70s, 80s, all of that, and hearing the stories of my clients that experienced that life. Um, like Leslie started in 76. I had clients that worked in the 60s. Leslie Scoble and Terry Ann, and they worked in the 60s. And you know, it's nice to hear about a lifestyle that is completely gone. You know what I mean? Um, Jeff Goodwin, we were talking not too long ago, and he said to me, you know, they don't even film on film anymore. It's not film. And I was like, yeah, it's all digital now. And he's like, yeah, I can remember physical film, like when everything was shot on physical film. And we were having a conversation about that history that he was aware of, that so many people forget about. Um, and you know, we're working on his book. He has a book about Blue Velvet, and the making of that. A bunch of behind the scenes photos no one's ever seen. Um, and then he did an ebook about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, with a bunch of pictures that no one has ever seen, because they're his personal collection. Um, and Leslie has a bunch of photos that no one's ever seen. Um, she sent me one for the book, and it was her getting ready to do a high fall, and Tom Morga is like holding the rope, and I'm like, what?
Well, we're getting down to the end of our time, you know. I'm really happy that you were able to come on here today, you know. I'll send this to you once I've got the editing done on it, you know.
Yeah,
So once that's ready, I'll send that to you. But I want to send a little shout out to Leslie Hoffman for connecting us, and hopefully, you know, you'll be at one of the cons that I'm at. But I think you and I know the layaway thing is
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So this year, I think I'm going to be at um, FedCon in Germany with David and Jennifer. I'm going to be at London Film and Comic Con with Sean Young and possibly others. Um,
You
I'm
think
going to
Sean Young
be.
would do this show?
I am not entirely sure, but I can ask Jacob.
I would
Um,
love to have her come on here. I've had like I said, I had Joanna Cassidy on here a couple times, and I had the guy that wrote the book Future Noir. He was on here for 5 hours.
oh wow.
And he warned me it was gonna be a long one, and I'm like, he wasn't kidding either.
Yeah. Um, I can talk for hours and hours, so I'm not surprised. I'll be at London Film and Comic Con. I'll be at Horror on Main with
Mhm.
one of my clients, a makeup artist. He hasn't been announced yet, so I'm not going to name him.
Mhm.
Um, I will be at. I am booking BadCon this year in November in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And hopefully it'll be a great event. And there you never know where else you'll see me, so I always say keep an eye on the Instagram because that's where everything is.
And
um,
plug your website on here again so people know where to find you.
so my website is Davidson Talent, Davidson talent.co.uk.
Mhm.
And the Instagram is just at Davidson Talent. um, you'll know it because it is the one with my logo. It's the only way to know it. It has 31,000 followers or something. So that's the one you're looking for. And we have that's where all of the announcements go. That's where all of the client announcements go. That's where you can reach me if you want to send fan mail or whatever to clients. A lot of it comes through me, and then I pass it on. We don't do through the mail autographs, but we do. Talent reads the fan mail. Um, so yeah, that's where you can reach me.
Okay. Well, I thank you for coming on here today. It's been a wonderful connection. And like I said, when I get this edited and all ready, I'll send it to you. And yeah, we'll take it from there. I'll be reaching out because you definitely have some talent I want to have come on here.
Yeah, you can message me anytime, man.
Absolutely. Anyway, you take care and God bless.
You too.